Smash that like button. Subscribe to the page. Check out the podcast below in the description. Also, our friends at geology.com/ham. I got to give you credit because you're like, look at him, and you pointed to him across the field, and Armstead, I think, had walked by a little earlier. And the difference is Armstead, who is massive, even for NFL standards, right? He's tall for like NBA standards. He's an enormous human being. First round pick, first round body for sure. So is Kinlaw. And I think Buckner is closer to Armstead of when you were around those guys, they're just long. Like they're 300 pounds, but if you just saw him like, at a NBA game, I know he's a big Kings fan from Sacramento, he would probably just look huge, like tall, but he's not fat or he's not, like a defensive tackle. Very proportionate. Kinlaw to me is much more old school. Like those two guys look like they're from the Pac-12. That guy looks like he's from the Deep South, played in the SEC. His ass is enormous. His legs are huge.
Calves are huge.
He is fucking. He could probably play at 340 pretty easily. Here's the thing: when they drafted Buckner, Buckner was not a project. He played his ass off at Oregon. He was, I don't want to say a can't miss, but it felt like he was the equivalent of like Patrick Surtain this year, maybe Minka a couple years ago. Like, I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I know he ain't going to suck. Like, this guy's going to – that was how all my friends that did the SEC talked about Patrick Surtain. Like, does he have elite speed? Is he going to be an elite player? I don't know. He's going to be solid, though. No one will regret having that guy on his team. I think Minka's become a lot like that and probably even a little better. But Buckner was like that immediately. He was just like, you want him on your team. He's solid. You feel good about it. I think a lot like you feel that with offensive linemen a lot, right? Like, I don't know if this guy's an elite player, but he's going to be our starting guard for a decade. You feel fine. They do need Kinlaw because he has a high and a low because he was so raw coming in and he ended up at junior college and then he played for a couple years at South Carolina. Their team wasn't that good, but his best games the year he was drafted, I remember people saying the two games that really stood out were Georgia and Florida. And I think the Clemson game was like when they played the three blue chip programs who were all like top 10 teams, he stood out. And a couple times last year, like when he would make a play, his plays would be like, holy shit, right? We're just like throw a guard, engulf the running back. Can they get a guy? I don't even think you can, like, I'm not even saying best case be like a Pro Bowler, but be a guy where you go, this guy has Pro Bowl ability over the next couple of years when this season ends. I think that's what they're looking for this year. A more consistent player, a more like, you're just naturally going to have bad games. Because I was thinking, listen to McVay talk and, just your dumb moments as a coach. As a coach, like every week leading up to the game, there are going to be some weeks where you're just more tired, where you're not having clarity with your game plan, and other weeks where just things hit when you're watching film. No different as a player. Some weeks you probably feel really fresh. Other weeks you're like, God, I don't feel loose. Think about like playing golf. Some weeks you're like, God, my swing feels pretty good. Other weeks you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I think being a rookie has to feel most of the time for most guys, not like Wirfs and, Herbert, where it's just going well, where you're just like, I bet more than half the season you're like, God, this is crazy. Like this is a lot. And I think now there's no excuse for that. You know what you're getting into. Can you just have 10 good games out of 17? Like 10 games where you're like, God, Kinlaw was fucking good.
Yeah, and 7 just solid. I mean, you're allowed to have bad games.
Yeah, you're allowed to have some bad games.
I thought.
But I mean, a couple in those 10 where you have like a sack and a half and a couple TFLs. Where you just go like, he was like one of the better. You drafted him 14, guy.
Yeah, look, well, to me, he's there to be powerful. He's there to get after the quarterback. The pick 6 he had against the Rams last year was a pretty telling play because it was soft hands and then effortless running for 30 yards, right? Do you remember that play?
Not really.
Let me see if I can find the video. It was just so his physically, you look at him and go, this guy's about power, which obviously he is, but there's so much more to just his basic abilities. Hold on, here we go. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I think when you look at the best of Buckner and the best of Armstead is a twitchier player than Buckner. But Buckner's relentless energy and consistent toughness. Oh, yeah.
Soft hands. We're for those of you on the podcast, we're watching, and then
You're just saying watch him move.
Yeah, like that's just not.
Yeah, to me, he can be a hybrid of the two of those guys. I think he can be a better player than Armstead. Will he probably ever be Buckner? That'll be hard. But I think he can bring a combination of the two of them. He's a little twitchier and a big-time athlete. Like Buckner, relative to Armstead's the way better athlete than Buckner, right? But if you talk to the people at Oregon, Buckner was clearly the better player. But Armstead, if we could ever get Armstead to do this, well, I think he's not, But his God-given gifts are just so freakish that even when you just see Armstead out there at practice, you're like, this guy looks pretty sweet. Like, I understand why Kyle and Sala were like, yeah, we want this guy around. Yeah. Like, I do get it. But ideally, when you can get two guys like to go with Bosa, their defensive line, because if Armstead can become your third best defensive lineman, you're in pretty good shape. Because when they had probably the top defensive line in the league 2 years ago when they made the Super Bowl, that's what he was, right?
Right.
Bosa and Buckner were clear 1-2 in some order depending on the game. And then Armstead just like I get to rotate over here, get on your weak link.
And that's way better than most teams' third best pass. I mean,
God,
maybe better than their second.
Every team in the league would sign up for Armstead as their third best defensive lineman. Now, ideally not $17 million. They'd like him. What do you think Armstead is, in all fairness to him? Like a $10 million player, right?
Yeah, I was going to say 12. Yeah, 10.
Yeah, okay. If you got him for like 4 years, $50 million, 25 guaranteed, you feel pretty good. But, that's just not what I'm not saying if he would have hit the open market, someone would have given him.
You're saying from a productivity standpoint.
Yeah. And, Bosa ideally becomes a $100 million player, and Kinlaw just looks like a guy this year that you go, this guy can be a guy one day that you pay a lot of money. I mean, you drafted him just where you drafted him. I mean, they really between those three guys, I mean, what was Armstead? Like a 15th overall, 17th overall? Like, I mean, those three guys are all obviously
drafted higher than that.
Well,
what time was it at the Hooters with you, me, and Ricky Waters when I said I didn't like the pick?
I thought he was in the teens. I thought because they traded, I thought he was like 17.
Yeah, 17.
Back. So they have the second overall pick. They have 17th overall pick and a 14th overall pick. That's a lot of capital.
Second overall. That's what you said. Yeah.
Wouldn't you say just
two
three
premium first rounders? Yeah, absolutely. 3 first rounders on your D line. But that's how. Like, go look at some of the best defensive lines. That's usually how they kind of look, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if we went and looked at Washington's defensive line, like I don't think Chase Young's the only first rounder on that defensive line, right?
No, they got a couple other ones. Yeah.
Like where
That's
was?
Fair. Well, even once they got Khalil Mack, they had Floyd before he went to the Rams. So even when he was good with the Rams, like, yeah, ideally you always have to have a couple first-round defensive linemen. The best defensive lines aren't like, we got 4 7th rounders, we just play our ass off, right? We just play with gusto. It's like, well, you can only gusto Trent Williams and Quentin Nelson so long, right?
Here's a couple of quotes from Wednesday's post-practice. Samson Ebukam, the transfer, John, from the Rams. I feel like he's going to have an all-pro year the way he's going right now, instead of Kinlaw. DeMeco Ryans, new defensive coordinator. He's going to take a huge jump this year. He's been doing an awesome job. I can already see how much better he's gotten in the couple of weeks we've been together. Well, if that's true, then that's, I believe that he means it and that's what he's seeing. I'm just saying if that's what it actually translates to on the field, a huge jump. If you get a huge jump, then you've got that you combine those two comments, then you do have a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro level player.
I'm not trying to, pee in the pool here. I would imagine if we just canvassed the land of every training camp, that a lot of stuff like that's being said about their first-round pick previous year, right?
Oh, that's why I take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But, it's to me, it goes back to if they
He's huge.
The fact that they're saying those things doesn't mean that's what's about to happen. But there have been first-round picks where no one is saying that thing about them going into their second year, right? Yeah. And we do view him as a guy that, he was obviously good enough to be drafted as high as he was, but there was also just, you hoped, some year 2, year 3 development with him. That's part of what the expectation was when they got him. Like, fill in DeForest Buckner's shoes year 1 is not usually what anybody does.
What do you think about a little Wiseman-y? You knew it was for the bigger picture, right? But you knew the equivalent, like take it. You just weren't. Where do you ever going to get a guy that looks like that for the Niners again? Right. To me, it was the right pick.
Yeah.
Like I swinging on an offensive lineman. Now you go, would they have rather had Wirfs? Could they have taken Wirfs? I mean, you could have gone back and forth over that because obviously Tampa wouldn't trade Wirfs for Kinlaw
They
right
would
now, right?
not.
If
Could
the
you have
Niners
done
could do it all over
no Trent Williams, Wirfs,
and just
keep Buckner?
McGlinchey, and then you'd have a bunch of extra money to do other shit. Yeah, but it's in fairness, it's always easy to play that game.